There's never been a better time to start $1 million one-person business.
After studying so many successful solo entrepreneurs, what patterns have you observed about how they define a rich life?
Freedom is a value.
You are a woman who is doing it all.
I have to remind myself of that sometimes when I have a lot on my plate, that it's such a blessing to be able to be with people that you love. To me, that's wealth.
That is a rich life. Have you noticed any turning points that transformed these average people into highly profitable people?
It was the moment where they let go of their belief in authority figures.
Based on your research, what are you seeing as the next sort of trend for solo entrepreneurship evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Welcome back to the Rich Life Recipe. You know how most people believe you need a big team, a massive investment to build a truly profitable business? Well, today's guest has discovered something fascinating: an entire underground movement of solo entrepreneurs who are quietly building million-dollar businesses, all without hiring a single employee. In fact, there's a certain secret about both of your favorite hosts later in the show. Context. We're continuing our Rich Life Recipe series, where we learn from people living extraordinary lives about what actually creates richness and meaning. What makes our conversation today so valuable is that our guest has spent years researching and interviewing these one-person business millionaires to understand exactly how they're doing it, to identify specific patterns, specific recipes, if you will, strategies and mindset shifts that allow ordinary people to create extraordinary income while maintaining freedom and control over their lives, or what I like to call a rich life. We wanted to bring you someone who could speak directly from her experiences of interviewing others on their experiences, because she's not just documenting a business trend, a growing business trend, but she's revealing a completely different path to financial success that challenges the status quo, that challenges everything we've been taught about what it takes to build wealth in today's economy. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all genders and non-genders, welcome to the Rich Life Recipe with our guest, Elaine Pofeldt. Elaine, did I get your surname right? Because I was so worried about misspelling it or mispronouncing it.
Well, you did a great job, Jason. I really appreciate it. And it's so nice to be here with the two of you. I feel I should be interviewing you because you were some of the original $1 million one-person businesses. So this will be a lot of fun to have the tables turn. And I have some good news. There's never been a better time to start $1 million one-person business. And I'm basing that on boring Census Bureau statistics. The number of $1 million one-person businesses doubled for the first time in 2022. That's the first year for which we have statistics that we can use. And there are now over 104,000 in the US. It's really remarkable. We can get into why, but AI obviously is helping people extend what one person can do. And I know you two are really big students of how to run an efficient business. So there would be a lot to talk about.
Can't wait. We're definitely going to bring that up. But I suppose my first thing, the thing that everyone always asks about, the number one question we get asked is, what drew you to study one person, no employees, or solo $1 million entrepreneurs? Was there a particular story or pattern that you noticed that made you realize, hold on a second, maybe this is not a fluke. Maybe this isn't luck. Maybe there's some sort of significant shift in how people are approaching building wealth?
I started out as a reporter covering entrepreneurship, and I worked at Fortune Small Business Magazine covering scalable startups. And what I noticed was no one was covering the one-person businesses, but I was very interested in them. And then when I started a freelance business, I found people were often more interested in asking me about how I did that than about the businesses I covered, even though my business had much less impact than those. So I started to feel there was a lot of public interest. And then I had a blog for Forbes about entrepreneurship, and I was looking for ideas one day back in 2012, I think it was. and I came across the non-employer statistics for the US government. And when you call something non, you know what the sentiment is towards it. It was almost like a non-entity. But what I saw was there were quite a few businesses in all different disciplines that were breaking 1 million with no employees on payroll. Non-employer means they're not employers, but they had contractors, they were using automation. I did a post just about the dry statistics and it went viral, and people started writing to me in droves and asking me, what were these people doing? And I couldn't find out, because when you fill out a census form, they don't give out your information to any reporter who calls up. It's private information. So I wrote to the readers of Forbes and I said, what are you doing? And they started writing to me. One of the original ones was Dan Mezaritsky, a fitness trainer who was licensing. He's at Fitness on the Go. He was licensing his methodology to other trainers. Rachel Charlupsky, this was back in the BlackBerry era. I don't know if you remember the BlackBerry, but she was running a baby. I had one. I loved I loved the little keyboard. But she was running a babysitting company for the spouses of professional sports players, so that the kids could go with these babysitters and the spouse could go and watch the team from her BlackBerry, and doing it at hotels, places like that. There was a financial planner. Alan Walton was doing a spy camera store. And so I published that post. It went even more viral. And that started me on this path of trying to find more of them. And the same way I met you two was how I met the other ones, is just through introductions, or some of them would reach out to me and I would tell their story. And then more people in this category would write to me. And over time, I interviewed probably 100 that I thought were running legitimate businesses. I've weeded out a few that I felt I didn't really know what they were doing, usually involving cryptocurrency or things like that. but these are all legitimate, real businesses.
Wow. That's a truly remarkable insight, because you mentioned being a journalist, obviously, which of course requires a lot of due diligence in your research before you bring these insights to life. So I knew you mentioned that the $1 million one person business has increased or doubled up to like over, I think you said 140 something thousand now. Besides AI, what do you think is driving that number?
Well, there are a few interesting trends this year. Sometimes it's market forces. For instance, with commodity prices high, farmers were commanding greater revenue for the crops that they sell. There are a lot of one-person farms. Maybe it's one person in the family owns it, and then the family works there, so they're not on payroll. So that went up this year. There were some mining related businesses that were doing really well, related to electric cars. That was another area. So I don't know if the trend will hold true in coming years, but I think it will, because professional services consistently is the biggest group, and they're also consistently one of the top two biggest users of AI. And that trend has always been consistent since I began tracking this. So you're in a professional services business where you're doing meeting planning, and think about how efficiently you run your business. Alicia, in the middle of the pandemic, her business was shut down and she was doing in-person events, and switched to online, which is very efficient. So now you added that to your repertoire, and you can do even more business, and your business grew during the pandemic when everybody else was folding, because you taught yourself how to use Zoom and simple technologies, but you weren't using them before. So I think there are more people that are diving into these things and familiarizing themselves. I wrote today about the 7-Figure Seller Summit for Forbes, and Gary Huang, who I've been covering for years, is an e-commerce seller, and he did a deep dive into AI the past 2 years to really learn how it works. And they can use it now for writing the Amazon listings. They can use it for making videos, for making images, for even making jingles about the product, like musical jingles. And when you think about that, they would have been hiring an agency, and it's kind of bad news for the agency, except if the agency uses the AI too, Now they can serve more clients, bigger clients, do more interesting projects. Maybe they were spending a lot of time on the behind the scenes, boring details of making a jingle that we don't even know about. And now they just tell the AI to do what they were doing manually.
Incredible. Jason, you're muted.
We weren't ignoring you, Jason.
I try so hard to be polite and allow Alicia to finish questions or to ask questions. Otherwise, I'm just interrupting all the time. So I find sometimes our timing is off and there's just this break of like nothing. I'm just waiting for
Dead
Alicia.
air.
Alicia's waiting
Dead
for
ant.
me.
Dead ant.
It's
Exactly.
And
okay
I'm
though,
like, oh,
Jason,
he's
because
trying
I'm
to
from New
talk.
Jersey and Alicia's from New York, so we're like the ultimate interrupters, right?
Totally.
I get to
Totally.
pretend I'm a successful doctor and just have lots and lots of patience. Um, dad joke, ting of one. Okay, so you've studied so many successful solopreneurs. This was a question I actually wanted to ask you the other day when we were on the New York Public Library panel, but I realized it wasn't about me. It was about everyone that was watching the talk and sending in questions. And I was trying to sneak in a question, but this was my question. After studying so many successful solo entrepreneurs like myself, like Alicia, what patterns have you observed about how they define a rich life beyond just the financial metrics? Because Alicia and I, when we started, that was sort of how this whole thing came to be, is her definition of a rich life was so different to my definition of a rich life, even though we both fit into the financial sort of box of rich. We were, Alicia famously wanted private jet and I just want private time. So we were so completely different on what our metrics of richness is. But what have you seen in the patterns? You've done, we said over 100 or close to 100 interviews. What patterns have you observed about how others define a rich life beyond the numerical, beyond the fiscal, beyond the fiat?
Well, I think they have one thing in common with you, Jason, which is freedom is a value. I think a lot of them love their freedom. And I mean, Alicia, too, we've talked about this. They don't really want to be told what to do by someone who isn't very knowledgeable about it. They don't want to have a boss, but they also want to control their day. It's not just how their work is directed, but it's like, what do I do when I wake up every day? What's my morning ritual? Who do I see during the day? When do I get to travel? They don't want anyone else telling them to do those things. They have different reasons for that. Some people have young children. Some people are digital nomads. Some people are athletes. Some people are pet lovers. They have different things in their life that motivate them to want the freedom. But they're also willing to do the work to get there. And there is a lot of work involved in setting up this kind of life. That's what I found. They put a lot of time into learning best practices, developing standard operating procedures so they can hand something off to a virtual assistant, and doing all the setup up front, because the freedom does require some structure in order for it to exist. But they're willing to do the work. I would say they are lifelong learners. They don't rest on what they did last year, especially now. I think there's so many new opportunities opening up with all the chaos in the world. Everybody is really bummed out about the chaos, but when you think about it, the internet caused chaos, and look at how many opportunities it opened up. AI, everybody's afraid we're all going to be losing our work to robots. I don't really believe that's going to happen. I think we're going to have more people building bigger businesses without a lot of startup capital because they learn to use the AI and robots. And the people that will be frustrated and unhappy will be those who are trying to hold on to what we had last year or the year before. It's natural to want that. We all love what we're comfortable with, our existing relationships, doing things the way we've done them in the past because it worked for us. But these people are really adept at recognizing they can't do that, and they have to keep learning new things. Part of it is by affiliation with other people. They're really good networkers. I found that a lot of them, like look at you two coming together on the podcast, a lot of them either knew each other separately from me or they came together because we knew each other, and they're really good at collaborating, learning from each other, and they don't feel they need to monopolize all the work there is to do in the world. They like to do great things, and they find a way to make it happen.
So true. And speaking of which, finding a way to make it happen and building businesses faster and bigger in a shorter amount of time using I recently was looking into developing an app. And, old school app development is you hire someone with that development background, and they range anywhere from 100 to 150K, or you go through an agency, which is even probably more money. And a friend of mine, as you mentioned, networking, says to me, "Oh, you should check out this girl. She builds apps using no code." And I'm like, "What?" I thought it was going to be completely stupid and like, what is this? So I do the deep dive. I do my due diligence. I set up a call. I talk to the girl who owns this company, no code app, and I was blown away. It was crystal clear, her purpose, what they do, how they do it, the amount of time, everything like boom, boom, boom. And it's looking like I will be working with them to develop an app, and they use AI to do all of it, and it's no code. So basically they then teach you how to fix it yourself because AI generates the code, but for the person, you're using drag and drop icons. So it's like a translator. And to me, I mean, exactly what you just said. I don't think anyone needs to be afraid of AI. It's mostly how you're going to use it to benefit whatever it is you want to do. And to my second part of this, I know we all wear multiple hats and we're all doing so much, whether it's business, personal, all these different things. And Elaine, I am always just in awe by you, um, both in your professional life and in your personal life. You are a woman who is doing it all, and you're running a successful business. I'm sure you could incorporate yourself into the $1 million one person business if you were allowed. I'm not sure if you are or not, but I'm sure you would be in there with us. And also putting 3 kids in college, almost soon to be a fourth, and doing all of this while running a business. Like, I can barely take care of my hairless cat, let alone 3 kids in college and all of the stuff that comes with that. And we've talked about some of these things. So for our Rich Roller listeners who are juggling, multiple hats and trying to start a business, what are some of the key ingredients that make your life meaningful, joyful, purposeful? We love to touch on the 3 pillars: health, wealth, and wisdom. What are some of your tangible ingredients that you incorporate daily, to achieve all of this that you've achieved?
Well, thank you for saying that. I sometimes don't feel I'm holding it all together, but yoga is a foundation for me, and that's one thing. I did a
Love
survey
that.
in my book, Tiny Business, Big Money, of there were about 50 entrepreneurs, and you both know that book. And basically, they have a spiritual practice of some sort. Sometimes it's prayer, sometimes it's meditation, sometimes it's something else, but they have a spiritual center. Virtually all of the entrepreneurs exercise. They make time for it. And I think it's one of those things where you could take on more work and you can always squeeze out exercise, right? It's so easy to squeeze it out. But I learned that to keep my stamina up, I really need to prioritize that. And I go to yoga pretty much every morning, first thing. I go to a 5:45 a.m. yoga class. If I can't make it, I have a plan B, and I go at night at 6:30 when my son is in karate, because otherwise I won't have the energy and I won't have the mental patience and staying power with all the stress of running a business. Because no matter how much I love my business, I love writing, I love my clients, but things come up, projects get canceled or someone pays you late or whatever it is. There's always friction in everything that you do. And it allows me to come at it with some peace, most days. And and then I would say friendship too is really, really important. That's another thing that we can squeeze out of our lives to squeeze in more work. And I learned to really prioritize that. That is a cornerstone of wealth. Of course, my family, is the center of my life. but your friends are your chosen family, and they're so important. And I've learned the last few years what good friends I have. I really treasure my friends. And now that my kids are a little bit bigger, when they were younger, I couldn't get out as much. I really would like to have, but I just couldn't. But now I try to go into New York City once a week. I just saw Alicia. We went to a very
You
fun
did.
gourmet food tasting the other day. And Jason, if you were in town, we would have invited you. And and sometimes it's inconvenient in terms of fighting traffic and things like that. But whenever I get there, I have no regrets. I'm so happy that I went. I'm so happy that I saw the friends that I have. And I think that's really important. And there's a lot of blending between my work and my friend group. I really am lucky in that because I'm a journalist, I get to interview people and I learn a lot about them. And I have found that I really like the people that run the $1 million one person businesses. We're very like minded, and I've become good friends with many of the people I've profiled over time. So I think that's important too. Sometimes if you're very busy, looking for opportunities to enjoy what you're doing is so important, and just be present for it. We all rush around so much. And then in terms of money, I feel like you don't want to be in the red, basically. I set the title the $1 million one person business because that's the number that people were hitting, and it's very aspirational for a lot of one person businesses. But you don't have to be at a million to have the perfect life. You could be living in rural Tennessee and have 60,000 and be living like someone who's a millionaire in New York City or California. So it's all relative. You don't want to have financial stress. If you want to go on vacation, it's nice to be able to do it. I don't think you have to have the ultimate luxury vacation for every trip. Sometimes just meeting a friend in Airbnb and like holding up and drinking coffee or wine or whatever and catching up is just as much fun as doing, helicopter skiing or something glamorous like that. So it's really up to the person. I mean, for me, just I'm going to Florida next week to help my daughters drive their Toyotas, their college cars back from Florida. And it's a long drive, but I'm going to treasure every minute because they're away at school and I miss them. And just being in the car with them is a treat for me. So I have to remind myself of that sometimes when I have a lot on my plate, that it's such a blessing to be able to be with people that you love and enjoy. And that to me, that's wealth.
Well
That is a
said.
rich life, and we go over this again and again on this podcast, like reminding people that is what rich looks like. It's time with people you love. It's money to buy freedom. It's the ability to take a car ride from Florida back up to where you are. It's time to do things that you need, like yoga or Pilates in the morning, or taking your kids to sports. This is what makes a rich life. And it's so easy to forget that because of the numbers, because people are constantly chasing some sort of number. 5 years ago, it was a million. Now it's a billion, and I'm sure you'll be reporting the first ever one person, no staff billionaire, which leads to my next question. With ongoing advances in AI, in automation, in robotics, in digital tools, there are new opportunities emerging every single day that guarantees to make everything easier. I mean, Alicia mentioned this with apps earlier, to build these types of businesses. What are you seeing based on your research? What are you seeing as the next sort of trend for solo entrepreneurship evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, one interesting thing, I don't often talk about the ultra high end of this market, but there is a small category. Usually it's about 3 to 400 businesses that are at 5 million and up that are solopreneurs, and they tend to be either hedge funds or Hollywood performers who have a solopreneur business, for instance. I think with the hedge funds and private equity funds, what we're going to see is they're going to buy up a whole bunch of small businesses, kind of like Thrasio did with the e-commerce, and really shrink the back office. And I think the first $1 billion one person business, it will not be the story that I like, which would be you or Alicia or one of the other $1 million one person businesses getting to a billion. I think it's going to be a private equity fund is going to do a roll up and eliminate all the people. So that's why I'm not super excited. I'm excited about the potential for individuals to build bigger businesses with fewer people because it lowers the requirement of having access to capital, because historically a lot of people have been kept out of doing things like Alicia is with the app. They would have to go to Silicon Valley, raise funding. Maybe they wouldn't be networked with the people out there. They would never raise the funding, and then they couldn't do what they wanted to do. If we have a no code app and Alicia can do it herself with not much funding, now more people can have these kind of businesses. So I think with all these AI tools, we'll see individuals getting a lot further. And I'm going to be very excited about that. But I'm not super excited about these funds consolidating a lot of small businesses, because there is something nice about the businesses being run by real people rather than a financial entity. I think there's a lot more soul when there are real people behind them, and personality and community spirit and other things. By community, I don't just mean in the local community, but also the community of a profession, for instance, among event planners, for instance. So that will be an interesting thing to watch. I don't know where the other ones will come about. I think possibly you might have a heavily automated e-commerce juggernaut, where someone strings together all kinds of technology and it's one person in their living room. Could be a manufacturer, because you can do outsourced manufacturing. Maybe somebody will partner with an overseas factory, for instance, or maybe in the country, who knows, with all that's going on. They'll have an invention and they'll scale it up without people. Because interestingly, in Tiny Business, Big Money, I have a database in the back. We did some original number crunching using census data about the businesses less than 5 employees that are bringing in the highest revenue. And butter creameries, heavily automated business, less than 5 people. I think they average 4 employees, are bringing in like 20 million each with almost no payroll. It's very low payroll. And it's fascinating. If you like to geek out on numbers, looking for business opportunities, I was chuckling like a mad woman. Like when my daughters and I were working, they're very good math students and they help me program the Excel sheets. But that's where I think you're going to see some of the $1 billion one-person businesses, the ones that already don't have many employees. And maybe you could eliminate 1 or 2 more, and one person who's adept at managing all the tech could get pretty close to $1 billion.
Wow, I'm like mind blown. When you say butter cream, what are we talking about here?
Well, like when you buy
Cupcakes?
a
What are we
stick
talking
of
about?
butter, like literally, they don't have the butter churns anymore. It's like
Right.
they probably have these big vats of some sort, but it's basically automated equipment,
Wow.
and they make the butter there. These might be owned by dairies. I'm trying to get to the bottom of who actually owns all of
Mm.
these, but it could be a secondary business owned by somebody who's in a big dairy family, for instance. So that, and the top one was casinos, and I think it's riverboat casinos, but I'm not going to recommend those types of businesses. That would be very hard for the average person to get into. And some of them really are very specialized, but there are niche players out there, right? If you're in one of them, and you can look through the back, like for instance, flavored waters, those flavorings for the waters, you could have an outsourced factory making your own flavor and be one of these high revenue businesses with maybe 2 or 3 people, and then you refine it so that you don't need the 2 or 3 people. And my
Hmm.
feeling about job elimination, in case anyone is wondering, is I want to see everybody having their own business. So they may not have a
Mm-hmm.
job, but it will be easier for them to have a business. And I feel one of the most vital skills for the future is everybody needs to know how to run a business, because when you can run a business, it means you can walk away. You never have to be in a coercive situation. You never have to work for a bad boss or a bad company doing something you don't want to do. You can always work for a good company if you want to, but if you know how to run a business, you can always say goodbye and go do your own thing and be free. And I think that fights a lot of coercion in society, when everybody is empowered to make their own money. Now, it's not that easy for everybody. Not everybody thinks entrepreneurially, but you can do entrepreneurship light. Like maybe you're in a professional services job and you do a little freelancing on the side. That doesn't require you to be peddling a product on e-commerce or something like that. Some people just they love sales. They're just gregarious people, and they enjoy it. But not everybody does. Some people think things are too salesy. We did something at the library where we asked people to submit questions for our program on selling without selling, and the word ick came up consistently. How do I avoid the ick factor? Some people just can't sell. They hate it. So they have to try other ways of getting, maybe they go on a freelance platform, for instance, and it's not as salesy. It's kind of indirect, or they do freelance work for an agency where there's somebody who loves selling, who runs the agency and farms out the work to them. I mean, that's the beauty of right now is no matter what your personality, there's a way for you to sell what you do. You could do email marketing. You may never talk to anybody at all. Or if you're very personable, you go to trade shows and you mingle and just do what you do naturally and just meet people, new friends, and then they buy from you and it just happens organically. It's so beautiful because I think we didn't have that before. It was really limited to the people that were like pure business people and nobody else.
It's so interesting that you said that, because that was going to be my question to you is what advice would you give our rich rollers who are considering starting a business? Maybe they do want to get out on their own and try something new. And that was going to be my question to you is what vertical are you seeing great success in? That maybe this could be something that they would excel at. Or as you just mentioned, whatever it is that they're doing, they just find a way that to sell it based on their own personalities. And there is no better time than now. Even there's people on social media who sell stuff and they never show their face or their voice. It's not even them. They're using AI generated voiceovers. So there is so many platforms now to be able to do that, which is why this is the greatest time to start a business.
I always think it's best to start one in an area you know something about because you avoid a lot of the rookie mistakes. And often you'll know about a gap in the marketplace. So, like if you were in corporate working for a software company, you might know that there's no software product that addresses this one thing. Whatever you do, you'll see the gaps in the marketplace. Um, I would say put a few things out there and see what sticks. I'm always doing that where I put out different ideas and I test them. And if nobody's interested, I just table them. I'll give you an example. I sometimes get hired to ghostwrite thought leadership articles for people. There's a lot of demand for it. So I teamed up with some other journalists and we said, we're going to do a workshop for people about how to write their own thought leadership articles. And we had like 3 people sign up. Why? Because nobody wants to write them for themselves. So we learned that. So I'm not going to try to teach it anymore. I just figure it's too complex of a skill for a non-journalist to understand what the format is. It's kind of a high wire act to not be self-serving in those pieces. So that was good knowledge. And then I do other things that really take off. And you don't always know why. I mean, that's what I learned from these entrepreneurs. They put a lot out there. And I think you have to train yourself not to be afraid of being judged, not to be afraid of being imperfect. One of the things that was so great for me when my kids were growing up was taking taekwondo with them. I was sitting on the sidelines and complaining that I have no time to exercise. And there was this one other mom in the class. So I thought, oh, she's around my age. If she can do it, I'll do it. But it was like all men and boys mostly. And it was terrifying for me because you'd have to go in front of the class and sometimes do the moves while the teacher critiqued you. And there's a bunch of big guys. And I always was doing it wrong. But I desensitized myself. And I just said, there's no way I can learn it without actually showing up to the class, being critiqued, looking like a fool, going home, paying my daughter $25 to repeat it for an hour with me so I could learn what they learned in 1 minute in 2 hours and then go back to the class and show my face again. But that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur. You have to be vulnerable and you have to have a thick skin and not care about armchair quarterbacks, not care if you are not good at something. Try it because you'll never get anywhere without doing that. Jason, you looked like you were about to say something and I was rambling on there. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, Isn't it unmuting? There we go. Sorry, it wasn't unmuting. I kept pressing unmute, unmute, and it just wasn't. That was that frustration. Look, I couldn't agree more. Like, I think one of the reasons we wanted you on here was to say thank you, because without you, Alicia and I never would have got together. We never would have had the conversations we've had. We wouldn't have had the conversation about what does rich look like, what does freedom look like, what does feeling rich feel like. I said a lot of people, instead of worrying about how to make a million, work our way to get a repeatable, predictable income that makes about 100K, and then move to Brazil, Thailand, India, or South Africa, and you'll live like a millionaire. Much easier. And you said that in your amble, like your preamble, completely. There's other ways in which you can make a different type of money, live in a different place, and live like a millionaire without having to earn the million and deal with taxes and lawyers and all the consultants and professional services that a million brings, let alone a million problems. The other thing I love that you said, which is why I'm so like gung-ho on this mission and this idea of helping people become entrepreneurs, is the sovereignty, is the freedom of saying, I control my money. If I'm not liking this job, I can quit and go start a company. If I don't, you don't have to work for yourself. Knowing how to work for yourself means you can go work for someone else because you've got this get out of jail card, right? You know that you could do it again if you had to, that there is a recipe, just like we do in this show, for making money anywhere, anytime with the skills that you've learned from others. That it's not about, how, it's about now. It's not about how, it's about who. Let me go find someone that's done it like you've done by interviewing all these incredible people. And for those that are listening, Elaine has written 2 incredible books, but she's also got these blogs on Forbes with different stories of different people in different circumstances that have done it. Alicia and I couldn't be further apart. She grew up in a first world country. I grew up in a third world country, or a developed country, and an underdeveloped country. First language, my country has 44 official languages. Hers doesn't even have an official language. Like, there's so many differences. She's a woman, I'm a man. Like, you think about all these constraints that we would have had, as well as the different times in which we grew up. And yet we both found a way, whether it was because of necessity, whether it was because we believed that we could control our destiny better than anyone else could, whether it was, like Elaine said, because circumstances came in and we were very quick to adapt. And also something Elaine said that I was hoping you were paying attention to when you were listening to this, our rich rollers, and that is this. For most of us that are successful, and I mean successful without the inverted commas around the word successful, we have tried more and failed more than you have ever tried. That is probably what's made us wealthier, richer, more successful than you are, because we kept trying. You said yourself, you did karate, you did taekwondo. Like, you weren't scared to put yourself out there. You literally were putting your chin on the line, because taekwondo is a kicking sport. Well done to the Koreans. Kamsapapida. And I think that's so important for everyone listening to the show. This is your permission, that there is resources out there by incredible people like Elaine, who've put down other recipes far better than ours because they've been doing it for longer, that perhaps our stories don't click with you. I guarantee you, if you go through her blogs, there will be a story that does click with you. There will be an entrepreneur and go, oh, that's a lot like me. And you'll find out the things they've done. And it isn't all professional services. It isn't all lawyers and dentists and doctors and accountants and financial services. It isn't all PE firms that are just rolling up smaller family companies and rolling it under and just hiring freelancers. There's all kinds. Try them, see what fits, just like you did with clothes. Throw away or give to what doesn't work. Try again, try again, try again. The average successful entrepreneur has 7 failures under their belt. Unlike the fake thing about 7 revenue streams, they're actual failures. There's very few, like Jeff Bezos in the world, that did one business that did incredibly well. Predominantly, they tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed. And that's an important thing to remember. IKEA started off as a pen. Lamborghini started off as a tractor. Like, they all changed to become what you see them as today. And you think, oh, they've got it right the first time. Twitter started off as a podcasting app called Opedo. Careful, Jason. So really, don't think to yourself, but I'm special, but I'm different. You don't know my circumstances. Elaine has taken the time to find all kinds of people from all over the world to give you great examples of what can be done, which leads me to my last question. I'm sure Alicia has another question, but my last question is, again, going back to what you've done, going back to those stories, going back to those people that you've interviewed. And I've got to ask the question about how it's affected you, right? How, when you, what have you noticed any sort of common pivotal moments or turning points that transformed these average people into highly profitable people? And I want to use the words profitable because I'm sure some of them are not free. Some of them are still working because they have to, because they're donning treadmill, or because, like Alicia, they want a private jet. So, what have you
That's
found in
right.
your research is the most common pivotal moment or turning point that transformed the average person or the ordinary person into the extraordinary person?
I think it was the moment where they let go of their belief in authority figures. Often they had a moment where they were in the conventional workplace and expecting it to go fairly, and it didn't. I'll give you an example. Kathy Guggenauer, who you may have been on some of the programs with her, she runs a business called Expert VA Training, where she trains people to be virtual assistants. She worked in marketing and was interested in a promotion. She went to her boss in a telecom company and said, "What do I need to do to get a promotion?" He said, "You need an MBA." So she went out, got an MBA at night over a couple of years, all that expense, all that time. Then she came back and asked for the promotion. And he said, "Well, you're not going to get it." And she said, "Why?" He said, "Well, the real reason is you laugh and smile too much." And she was so pissed off, she left. She left the company, and she started a candle business, direct selling for a short time, but that wasn't a fit. But then she realized her marketing skills were valuable, so she started running seminars for real estate agents about how to improve their website, and they needed help writing the blogs. Then she started getting so much work she couldn't do it all, so she started hiring other people and trained them to be her assistants, and then trained them to have their own assistant practice, because she realized they didn't have the business skills. They knew how to do the writing, but how to maintain cash flow and all of those things. I think she's a really good example of just this lightning bolt moment that we have to create our own opportunities. And it's basically, they realized they can't put their success in someone else's hands.
Mm,
That if they're counting on other people to recognize their talent and greatness and wonderfulness, it may never happen. So they have to bring their gift to the world and act on what the world is telling them. Kathy went out, she saw what people needed. They didn't need the candles, but they did need the blogs. And then they needed
mm,
the training in how to be a virtual assistant. Um, and it's also where they let go of their preconceptions about what the business should be and really listen to the marketplace, because that's another area where our ego can get in the way, where it's like, no, I'm doing this kind of business, but no, the market wants this other thing. Well, are you willing to take the ball and run with it, even though it's not something you ever did before? I mean, I remember Alicia, I was thinking about the vulnerability when her whole business froze because no one was doing live events. And she was the first to market out there with the Zoom events. And she thought about, what can I do with these events to make them palatable to people? And so she realized all the celebrities were sitting home in Hollywood, nothing to do. So she called them up and invited them to these boring annual meetings where they were talking about financial results and things to liven up the meetings. And that was how she got the ball rolling. And then she was doing these interactive chef events where maybe they would mail, the ingredients for a margarita to your house or something like that. And then you would make it in conjunction with your team. But she was putting out these videos on LinkedIn all the time to promote it, not knowing whether it would work. And she was willing to take a leap of faith. That's another area that I think is important to just think about, because a lot of people now who are looking at small businesses are people who have lost government jobs, and that's the ultimate secure job. That's why people take those jobs. They have a
Mhm.
family or some other obligations where they want to know their paycheck will be in their bank account. Well, if you're now starting a business, it's a different mindset of, the government isn't investing in you, an employer isn't investing in you. You have to make smart decisions in yourself. You can't invest in everything. You just have the budget of a real person. You probably don't have venture capital. So, what are you going to spend the money on or the time on that will get you from the idea to the sale, as Jason Allen Scott once said, most quickly? And then you have to actually take the leap and do it and spend the money, spend the time, find the person who will help you do it as a favor, but find a way to make it happen. And that's a different mindset than waiting for someone to approve it and going through the proper channels and validating it and testing it before it finally gets the okay from the big boss. There's no big boss out there. There's nobody approving this stuff. So that it's freeing, but it's a little scary too when you first leave the world of jobs to be like, oh, the buck stops with me. And
Hmm.
that's maybe good and maybe bad. I guess I'm about to find out. Um, so
For
anyway,
sure. I think you hit the nail on the head with a couple things there. Right. When the world stopped and I basically had to start another company doing something I knew literally nothing about, which was virtual events. Because at the time, there weren't really many companies doing them. So to build a new business based on something I knew nothing about, I think is something that can help our listeners in a sense of not everybody's an entrepreneur. Not everybody, which is why they take those government jobs for job security, right? But now your life, like this is what I said during the pandemic. No one is coming to rescue you, right? And sometimes you have to grow where you're planted. So even if you're in a job, let's say you hate your boss, you don't feel like this job is going to go anywhere. One thing you can do, which is also something I did many, many years ago, is create the job you want in the company you're at. So it's almost like become an intrapreneur. So I worked at an advertising company. There we had an event space, but we weren't doing any events in the space. So I asked if I could manage the space and I started a calendar and then I started doing the events and then one thing led to the next and then that was my new job. So I just think there's not everyone wants to have the responsibility of their own business, but maybe there's something you can do where you are, even if it doesn't exist. If you're looking for that, looking to add value to something that you're noticing maybe doesn't exist, but there's a need for it, you can bring that up to whoever is in charge where you're at and see if that's something you can pursue. Because again, it's like you were just saying, having the control in your own hands, there's nothing better than that.
Agreed. 100% agreed. Elaine, if our audience wants to find out more about what you do, which actually maybe quickly for those that don't know, Elaine's job is not only to share the secrets of one-person businesses, seven-figure one-person businesses and beyond, but she also does an incredible ghost writing services. I don't know if you want to quickly tell our audience about this incredible service that you offer and how it helps people, because books are something still that are respected, that are great for getting client acquisition, for getting in front of people, setting you up as an expert.
Oh,
Take it away.
sure. Well, one of the things that came out of my journalism was people started asking me if I wrote books and if I could help them write a book. And what I do is I bring my journalistic skills to this, where I basically interview the clients to draw their stories out, because people don't always know what's interesting about themselves. And I believe everyone has a hidden pocket of genius. And usually the book is about something that lives in that area of their mind. It's usually something that they've immersed themselves in for quite a while, and they have a lot of thoughts about it. They can move the conversation forward in their industry. And so I help them get that down on paper. And one of the things that's been really nice is with AI, I don't use AI for the writing because I think that takes the soul out of it, but I use it for managing the notes. I'll use tools like Fathom, where we record the interview. So the notes are very good quality notes. You can use ChatGPT to clean up notes and so on. And that really speeds the process, where you can now get out a good book in 6 months. It used to be about a year or more,
Wow.
but
Wow.
it's in the last year, it's really accelerated it. And that means more voices are getting out there. More people can write a second book, etc. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, now called X, or Facebook under my full name, or I'm on Instagram under Million Dollar One Person Business. I just started a Substack under Million Dollar One Person Business. I was working on my first post before, and Jason, you happen to be in it because it's following up on the library event. Alicia, I'm sure you'll be in there too, but some very soon.
Oh, can't wait.
And yeah, I love to hear from people. I do write back. It makes me a better journalist. And oh my goodness, there he is. He's so sweet.
Coming to the show. This is King Tut.
Oh my gosh,
Aw.
he's so cute.
He hasn't been feeling good, but say hello to Elaine.
Hello, King.
We'll write a book about him.
Elaine, where do we find your Substack?
It's $1 Million One Person Business. That's where I have it. And I'll send that to you for the show notes.
Yes,
So
please.
I
Yeah,
haven't
we'd love
posted
that.
to it yet, except 2 notes. So there's not much in there, but I do have some followers. So I felt like I can't let them down. I've got to give some new content there. And I'm going to make it a repository for the latest information on how to grow $1 million one person business, or a
Love
tiny
that.
business that makes big money, meaning one that has a couple of employees. So technically is an employer, but still isn't that big. It's not scalable. Because so much of this is happening in real time that I feel like waiting till the article comes out sometimes is too slow. I think people need it now. There's a lot of disruption, and there's so much opportunity for people who get in there right now and find it and make it their own. So that's going to be my role, is just getting things out there even faster.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Well, listen, on behalf of all our listeners, all our rich rollers out there, thank you so much for what you do. It's so important. And I think it's more important now than ever, because I think people want that safety, even if they don't become entrepreneurs, if they become intrapreneurs, which is a beautiful word. Thank you for sharing that with us, Alicia. I think it's a good time to think like an entrepreneur, even if you don't act like an entrepreneur. Just knowing that you have the freedom of choice, knowing that you can make the difference, knowing that you can change your life at any given time, that others have done it, therefore you can too. And I hope our listeners will reach out to you, because I know you've made my life and Alicia's life so much better just by being in it. And I think you'll do the same thing for our listeners.
Well, thank you both so much, because you've made my life so much better, and I feel you've become true friends. And I'm so glad that the $1 Million One Person Business topic brought us together. So thank you so much for having me.
I agree, Elaine. You're a gem. And anyone listening, our rich rollers, please check it out on YouTube as well. And don't forget to look up Elaine, and her book is amazing. And thanks again for joining us,
Oh,
Elaine.
thank you so much, Alicia. And Jason, I know you're out there somewhere. Thank you too.
We will see you soon.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss your weekly fix. New episodes are released every Wednesday. And if you think this podcast could help someone in your life build their own rich life recipe, please make sure to share this with them too.
Hey, you. Yes, you. I'd like to invite you to something brand new. Something we're calling One Person Empires. Who am I? Jason Scott. You just saw me a couple of seconds ago in that podcast, where we were telling you about a rich life, where we bring you guests to explain how to have a rich life. It's in this idea that we decided to create a community to teach people just like you how to have your own rich life. What is a rich life? It's about doing what you want, with whom you want, when you want, wherever you want. Think of One Person Empires like the Alcoholics Anonymous, a place to come to find community, to find people just like you who've done it, who've got through it, who can help you get through it. Because no one is coming to save you. That's what it says. Save yourself. Build an empire. That's what I want for you. That's what your family wants for you. That's what your community wants for you. AI, robotics, technology, tariffs, it's changing the world. But here's a chance to you to change your own world, to find sovereignty, to find independence. This is what we're offering. It's a set of principles and a set of challenges to turn you from one-upreneur to entrepreneur. It's a blueprint we can teach absolutely anyone. And that's what's inside One Person Empires. Other people just like you, learning the process, going through the challenges. In fact, I wanted to make it so bulletproof that in our very first challenge, I'm going to show you how to make all your money back for joining. And because you're a listener of the podcast, we've made you a special offer. Simply type in listener to get a discount in the community. Joining the community, have a chance to find out what it's like to live a rich life.